Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with educator, author, photographer, artist, vlogger, journalist, hiker, and investor Joshua Smalley. From his current base in Ethiopia, we get into a myriad of adventures that he's had in his life. From his beginnings in Seattle with dreams of architecture to teaching the students of the future in Africa, he has a fascinating life. This world traveler and wildlife tracker gets into his first book, Tales of Traveling Teacher, Walking with Snow Leopards in Paradise, along with many other adventures. From his early dreams, the journalistic jaunts, and so many other travels, we get into an ambitious and deep look into a life that is full of delightful depth. Enjoy this journey. Thank you for reaching out. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk about the wonderful work that you're doing. So again, thank you for taking a minute out for the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So before we get into everything that you're doing, there's so many things that you do. I want to begin with this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives. So many things about us changed. How did you get through the coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, acknowledging that so many people at that time were going through some very serious struggles, right? And losing loved ones, they themselves being ill, people in financial distress. Obviously, this is an issue that's impacting everyone. Fortunately for me, and lucky for me, no one who was, immediately in my family was impacted in terms of health. And I had just come out of a trip, actually, from December to January. I was in the Himalayas, actually, looking for snow leopards. And so I was going about my life as usual right before the pandemic hit. And that's just seeking adventure and trying new things and exploring. And then the pandemic took over the world. And at that time, really, I think for me, it was all about doubling down on who I already was. And because again, I wasn't going through crisis like other people were around the world, at least not in my immediate family. I was able to work from home as an international educator. And I found that I could go home and work and be incredibly efficient and do all the things that I'm so passionate about doing, whether that's art or music or photography or writing itself. And so it really gave me a chance to reimagine life and work balance and make sure that these two things are very much separate. And so now I've carried this forward and I live sort of a lifestyle where indeed work is over here and indeed play or hobbies or all the other projects I'm going to work on over here. And sometimes they overlap, but many times I'm able to prioritize them and keep balance. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. Fortunate enough to avoid all of the great challenges that people faced. And so I really doubled down on my lifestyle and priorities.
But I think with what you're doing, and as much as you're passionate about what you're doing, it's hard to separate the yolk and the egg because it's such a part. You just can't. You can't say when you're out on your own time that you don't want to take a picture of something, or you're not journalistically piqued by something, right? Or you don't look at a mountain peak and think, man, I want to try to, there's always probably, you probably have to play that balancing act all the time, I would imagine.
Absolutely. It's sort of a motto that I like to follow is life is beautiful, go see it. And when I was much younger, I was in an environment that was beautiful and supportive and wonderful in this community I was in. But at the same time, the individuals in the community didn't necessarily want to go and be active in the world. And I saw that as, man, I don't know how long I'm going to be on Earth. Don't know how many breaths I have. I don't know how much time I have. I really want to maximize each moment. And I want to dabble in lots of things. Co-authoring a book with a gentleman in California. And we both sort of have this idea that we're rebelling against this idea of niching yourself down into one thing.
Yeah.
We want to dabble and play and make mistakes, sort of along the lines of a Renaissance person, but of course, not at that level of expertise, but dabbling, like I said, and just seeing the world as a playground. And there's a line in one of my books that says, the lens you choose colors the world you see.
Yeah.
And I really believe that yes, there's a lot of difficulty in life and turmoil, but if you get up in the morning and see life through a particular lens, that sort of directs the way your day will go and how your life will go.
So there's so many parts of what you do, from education to writing to photography, journalism, all of these things. But if we put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids at career day, and they're like 12, 13 years old, and one of them wants to know what you do for a living, how do you break all that down and explain what you do for a living?
I would say that I explore. That's the first thing. And and I know often you're talking to people who are authors and they are professionals in different areas and different fields. And I think my professionalism comes from my exploration. So when I go to explore something, eventually it becomes something that becomes work that I do professionally. So whether that is journalism or fine art or photography or writing, whatever it may be, it's something that I initially start to explore and investigate, and then before I know it, it's an opportunity to do it professionally. So even here, where I live in Ethiopia, I've done so many tour guides, but I've not done any training in hospitality management or tourism, anything like that. It's just something that's naturally come out of my passion, my desire to do wildlife tracking. I'm a semi-professional wildlife tracker. And so I just had over 40 people I just brought into the wild with me. And it was a fantastic trip here in the heart of Ethiopia. So these kinds of things, they just sort of crop up from my passion.
So take me back to when you were 12 years old in a classroom on career day. What were you thinking you were going to do with your life? You have so much going on right now. What was the first dream?
I really wanted to be an architect. I was quite skilled in geometry and in fine art at the time. At 12, I was already a professional artist. So I was painting, doing murals for churches. I was doing storefront advertisements on their window panes. I was doing commission work for people. So already at 12, I was interested in art. And then I was gifted in mathematics, specifically geometry. And I thought, wow, this is a nice combination. Let's try it. Let's see. And I ended up doing like a job shadow for a short period of time in Seattle with some architects. That's where I'm originally from, Seattle. And I found out right away it's not something I want to do actually, and it felt too confining for me. I didn't want to sit in a cubicle all that time. So that's what it would have been like for me is architecture at first, and then right away I found that there were other things I wanted to do.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. One of my jobs when I was in my 20s, I worked for an architecture engineering firm, HNTB, and I did marketing for them. And I remember thinking I expected a little bit more, just a little bit more from the architects. I expected a different vibe. But I remember at that point, this was in the 90s, they printed so many versions of plans all the time. That print shop
Hmm.
was always printing. They were always revising. They were always, it was pretty arduous work.
For sure. What I was visiting was an NBBJ architect firm in Seattle at the time, multi floors, architects on every level. It was breakneck pace, and really the thing that was most interesting to me was down in the basement, the one gentleman who was making the miniature replicas of the work being done. That was the part that interested me. And when they were actually going out into the field and moving out of the office. And so, yes, very, very busy work, very arduous work, but for me it was too confining into one thing. I think so right off the bat when I was younger, I was noticing that I definitely wanted a lifestyle that explored many different kinds of things and not just zeroed into one thing.
So as a parent, you very well know that with the young mind, all the way up till three, all of these levels of personality traits are getting woven into a child's brain. What was it about your upbringing that gave you this proclivity to kind of branch out to all these creative venues? What were the initial seeds, the building blocks that have been harvested into this career and these passions you have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that it was both positive, encouraging things and then things I wanted to avoid simultaneously. So first off, my parents were amazing. The religious community I was in was also very amazing and gave me opportunities to lead, to try new things, to develop skill sets. Specifically, at the time, I was doing theater, and I've done some theater work in the past. And so I had an opportunity to do leadership and develop some skills and get confidence. So just the confidence to leave home and go to Ethiopia. I've lived in Belarus, I've lived in Kazakhstan, been many countries around the world. So that initial confidence to look beyond came from my own community. At the same time, I looked around and I saw a lot of people who, for me and my desires when I was young, seemed to stagnate a bit. And so, nothing that, I mean, that's the lifestyle that they wanted. But for me, I thought, wow, this is something I don't want. And if anything, some of that religious background inspired me to explore, because if God made the universe and the world, well, goodness, I want to go see it. I want to go see the cool things that he made and created. And so I would say that's part of it. And then I also I was blessed to go on some trips to Mexico and serve the communities that we worked in Juarez and Chihuahua. And so that broadened my very, very small world at that time. You see, wow, there's so much more out there. There's need, there's interest, there's excitement, energy, cultures, music, so many things to see and explore in the world. And I'd say it was that sort of push and pull of both things, what I wanted to move away from and what I was chasing after. Was both of these things were encouraged in youth.
So let me ask you, what was the first real visceral response to a painting? You were professional early on. What was the first time that someone was like, wow, blown away? Do you remember that moment?
I don't think I can narrow it down to one. However, what I found was one of the things that I was able to capitalize is in the city I was in and the community I was in, people were quite interested in their dreams. They found their dreams had much meaning and they really wanted to remember them. And I remember hearing the adults talk about this when I was younger, and I thought, this is an opportunity. How about if I consult with the person who had the dream, do a sketch mock-up, and then paint it for them? And so that actually ended up happening multiple times growing up, and it really blessed the person who wanted that commission to work in the first place, and then gave me an opportunity to do this work. And I think those were the pieces when I was quite young that I recall people being taken back emotionally and impacted by the work I was doing.
So who have been kind of inspirational forces, whether big time artists or writers or people in your local sphere, who has kind of molded the way that you've created and you've decided to live your life?
There's so many. Where to begin? Um, Obviously, I would start with my family, and so like for example, my brother, he plays so many musical instruments. So he even in music itself, he dabbles and plays with so many different range of instruments and skills. So things like that I was growing up around, seeing that in my family. Um, I, I I just love literature in general. I am a literature and photography teacher and journalism teacher in Ethiopia. So uh, you name the author, I pretty much will enjoy it. I have my favorites. I actually like a bit of the old school Washington Irving kind of writing, uh, swift writing, kind of this kind of writing. Um, so that inspired me to get out and explore as well in terms of just through the lens of literature. There have been people in my life who are like professionals who I don't know personally, who have helped me sort of manage my life. I'm really big in time management. I try to assign a task to every waking hour, whether that task is relaxation or family or hobbies or work. I don't want any hour to go sort of unnoticed or without some kind of intentionality behind it. And so Brendan Burchard is a sort of this life coach, very famous in the world, that I followed for a while, that I really appreciated. I got some ideas from him as well. Some of it was internal as well. And that's one of the books I wrote, was The Inner Voice Revolution, is this process I developed on my own over time. I remember so many people saying to me, and me naturally thinking, what is my future self wonder about my current way of living? And I thought that was a very intriguing way of framing your current life and how you go about your life and what you decide to do with your life. But then what I did is, over time, I created this process whereby future versions of yourself at different timelines. So in your 60s, in your 80s, in your 40s, in your 30s, whatever, would talk to each other, and I'm on the outside listening. So it's all a process of the mind. It's obviously projecting who you think you might, who you will be, what you will value. when you're older. And so that process is something that has actually inspired me to make a lot of the decisions that I make. Is this sort of conversations with my future selves and what I imagine them to value, speaking back into my current life. So it's a mix. It's hard to narrow it down to any one particular thing. I have many colleagues who inspire me, both educators and those who aren't educators. I'm blessed to rub elbows with people all around the world. In this sort of international teaching life, you're working with and you're teaching with many ambassadors, business people, dignitaries, world leaders, etc. And so you tend to be inspired by their stories and their life as well. So I mean, there are some people that are close friends of mine who've been to 150 countries and counting, and so even that in and of itself is inspiring to keep going and keep adventuring and exploring.
So, how did you get to Ethiopia? How did that become your life now?
I was teaching in Oregon for 4 years, and I knew I wanted to go overseas because teaching overseas is incredible. There's so many opportunities for teachers in terms of the housing is paid for, it's small class sizes, and you get the opportunity to travel. Students generally love learning, and that's a beautiful thing too in these international schools. And so I knew I wanted to do that. And so the first post was Kazakhstan. And honestly, it's one of the best countries I've ever been to in the world. It's a complete playground. People wouldn't really know that. They just associate with a particular movie. But actually, Kazakhstan is incredible. On weekends, I'd go looking for snow leopards in the Himalayas, or not the Himalayas, but the edge of the Himalayas, actually the Tian Shan Mountains on the Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan border. Then I would take my car out into the open steppe and look for woolly mammoth bones. And I'd go to the Shirin Canyon and explore. It's basically like a mini Grand Canyon, and go whitewater rafting, etc. It was incredible. That was the first taste of overseas life. A lot of teachers do 2 or 3 years and then they just keep going from school to school, sort of the ethos, the nature of the work. So I was 3 years in Kazakhstan. After that, I went to Belarus. Belarus was an incredible place to work as well. And I got to meet an amazing human being in the Nalaboki forest, Vadim Zdorovic. He's a zoologist, and I got to study wolves and research wolves. And it's sort of the fallout from Chernobyl. He's doing the work there to study the flora and the fauna and see the impacts of nuclear waste on the animals and plants there. After Belarus, 3 years there, I decided I was ready for the African continent. And so I came to Ethiopia. And so there's a whole process with applying for these jobs and job fairs, etc. But I was so happy to be here, one of the best schools really in the world. I'm very blessed to be here in Addis Ababa. And so been here for 8 years. And once I got here, this country's never been colonized. And so a lot of the infrastructure you might see in other countries is not here, for better, for worse. For someone like me who loves wildlife tracking and walking with wild lions in the night to study them, that's perfect because I just need to hire my staff to go with me and I can chart my own path and go do my work. Whereas in a lot of other countries, there's a lot of protections in place and a lot of guidelines and restrictions, proper safari parks, etc. Whereas here, sort of the open wild, which is fantastic. So I got married here to an Ethiopian, beautiful Ethiopian woman, and I have children here as well. So it's been amazing coming to Ethiopia and really enjoying the beauty and the culture, the textures. Every element of this country is amazing.
I'm a kindred spirit with what you're doing. There's a lot of things. I have a lot of interest in things that I do as well. And I always find that journalism, covering stories, has a way of opening up so many creative doors to your mind. And I'm sure you can attest to this. What's been a story that you covered, or what's been a pursuit of you journalistically that's really opened up and enlivened all of the other interests and talents that you have?
So to back up a little bit, how I got into journalism was sort of through the back door. I was suddenly thrusted into a journalism teaching position in Oregon State. I was sort of lost, and the Journalism Education Association swooped in and gave me an opportunity to train at University of Missouri, the Reynolds Journalism Institute, which is a quite prestigious institution. And so I had my training there, and then I came back better equipped to work with the students. And so ever since then, I've been working a lot with student journalists. I'd say the most interesting work we did was in Kazakhstan. You know, every country has varying degrees of allowances for journalism. So our students were quite interested in stories that were impacting their country and surrounding countries, especially around corruption and such. And so they began exploring this. I was their advisor, so I'm helping them. I'm vetting their sources. I'm helping giving them direction on angles on stories and such. So we tread carefully when we did this work, but as a result of that work, and then also coupling that with some work we did in Ukraine during some conflict, we actually became one of the top leaderships in all of Central Asia through our. We were early onto Twitter, actually, which is now X. We were very, very early to that years ago. And so my students were just pushing content out, and we were finding major organizations actually retweeting our information that we were getting in Maidan in Ukraine and also throughout Central Asia in our story. So without pinpointing a particular story, because I don't want to really talk about the particulars of that, it was amazing what those student journalists did. And then I got to be on the forefront of that. It was beautiful. It was daring, it was risky, but we had full parent support and some of the embassy support, and we proceeded, and it was amazing. When you're doing journalism that makes a real impact and gives the power back to people, that teaches students about the importance of journalism that keeps everything else in balance, whether that's governments or anything, and any other source of power, then the students really learn the importance of democratic systems and how valuable journalism is to that. So I would say that was one of the more interesting stories. There's been other things I've covered over the years. I would want to sort of go back to the Belarus story too. I didn't really cover Vadim Sidorovich and his wife, Irina Rotenko. They're both zoologists there. I did not cover them journalistically. I studied under them, and we did photography work, and you know, I helped them. I was an assistant to their work, but really astounding work that they are doing there in Belarus. So I have so many stories from there, but I don't know that it's pure journalism per se, you know.
So let's say you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you had a big book in your hands, and it was like a coffee table book, and it happened to be your life so far, and you handed it over and said, "This is how your life has turned out so far." Would that young version believe it?
This is my father and I have this conversation all the time, the whole pinch me moment,
Yeah.
because I came from rural America. I came from Walmart America, and I came from, which is not bad in and of itself. I don't mean to disparage that either. What I mean though is it's amazing I came from that place and then where I've been ever since, and sort of tracking. And all my trips, adventures, things I've done, I try to push the limits a bit. So I own a treehouse in Costa Rica. So there's this treehouse community that I love to explore. I was in Malaysia, on Borneo, on the island of Borneo, with the Palungan tribe and the Kalabit people. There's like 30 people or so left in the tribe, and spending Christmas with them. I'm climbing Kilimanjaro and summiting on New Year's morning. I'm exploring Mount Kenya with my students. I'm doing work with conservation with wildlife in South Africa. I'm doing tiger work in India and leopard work in Sri Lanka. And then I'm hiking all around the world. And it's many times I have to pinch myself and wonder, how on earth did this happen? And then, like your earlier question, tracing it back to those earlier roots. What was it? What seeds were planted that pushed me, that made me want to go out and really see the world and explore it and appreciate it and love it? And, you know, I do this on a very, very humble salary. There's nothing special about my very small teacher salary. So when people might look at me and say, well, yeah, you can do it because this, that, and the other, it's like I had plenty of excuses not to do this. And it's sort of where there's a will, there's a way. And so it's been something that I've been passionate about, and I put myself in situations around people and in contexts where I can try something new, explore something new, and so on and so forth. So I had friends who are going to go to Spain and visit in the next 2 weeks. And I was saying, you know, every time I go to a new place, I try to find the most unique, off the beaten path, away from tourist kinds of experiences. And I was mentioning Wadiks. Go to Wadiks. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. This this sort of cave community. Everybody lives underground, and it's like one of the oldest inhabited cave communities still. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It was my favorite thing I ever did in Spain. So I'm always on the hunt for something that's very human, very unique from my own background and experiences, and gives me a chance again to appreciate the world in a new way. There's plenty of difficulty in the world. There's plenty of harm and sadness and difficulty in all of our lives, including my own. And so choosing to find the beauty in every nook and cranny, even in the struggle, to find beauty in struggling, is something I kind of want to always do. I think of myself, and I tell my students this: think of yourself as a protagonist in your own story, and every day is a page in your book. And so what is today? So today's difficult. Well, that's what heroes go through. They go through the difficult journeys. I mean, you get the diagnosis that's not exactly what you would like it to be. It's very scary. Well, this is the opportunity in your own personal way to be a hero in your own story. And hero doesn't mean to be brave and smile. It might mean to just face it and just get up out of bed one day. And so from those who are struggling the most to those who are very affluent and well off, anywhere in between this, I think people can still put on a particular perspective every day and see the world and its beauty. Even if it's the mundane 9 to 5, there is adventure in it. It's up to you to find it.
So, in your professional line that you've drawn in your life, what are you the proudest of? Of everything that you've seen, everything you've done, everything you've accomplished, overcome, evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
I think I'm grateful that I still push on, that there's nothing that's causing me to be too jaded. That's nothing that's got me down. I'm relentless. And there's not one thing I really want to earmark as, oh, this is the one thing that really stands out, because I want to be on to the next thing again. There's some things that I've stayed with for a long time. Teaching, for example, I've been teaching for 18 years. So that's something I'm constantly perfecting and staying rooted in. So it's not like I'm just hopping around to everything just for no reason. But I think it's that insatiable desire to keep hunting for the next adventure and experience. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm taking them into the wild next month as I'm leading another tour group, another 40 plus people. And this time I'm bringing them. I'm throwing caution to the wind, and they will be safe. I have ensured all the safety protocols, especially for the other people I'm bringing with me. Various people of embassies and in my school, etc. So I need to make sure it's a safe environment. So it's perfectly safe. It's just a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old wouldn't imagine bringing them to hyenas and teaching them how to call hyenas, right? And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to be doing. And so it's going to ooze out from my own life into theirs. And then it's like reliving it all over again and seeing life through their eyes and the excitement through their eyes as well. So nothing in particular that I would say this is the one thing. I mean, I was speaker at my graduation. I could go on and different things. Like at university, but those to me are just fleeting things that I enjoyed at the time and I explored, and I'm on to the next thing, the next adventure.
So everyone has a perception of you in all these different roles you play: family, friends, students, fans, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think I embody multiple archetypes at once. I think there's this very professional, organized, and so sort of almost engineering my life kind of person that I embrace. I think I'm sort of a wanderlust lover, kind of go and as I've articulated many times here, just go and explore. I think I'm very intentional about everything that I do in life. So I think these are sort of the things I would earmark: is intentional, passionate, energetic. Uh, it's funny, the people who are drinking coffee in the morning, like, how do you have all this energy? Because I don't drink coffee and I'm just running circles around them first thing in the morning. It's just like, for me, life is a gift. Every hour is a gift. And I need to face it that way. I need to see it that way. There's this website called Wait But Why. And then if you search your life in weeks, it sort of can articulate your entire, if you live to be 90 years, what it looks like, just all in one very naked list or bullet list, I suppose, of boxes.
Yeah.
And every week I check one of those boxes off. It's a bit morbid, but it is incredibly motivating to say, did I live that week well? what about this next week? Am I going to live it well as well? Like, it really makes you zero in on the things that people in their 80s say, man, I wish I would have remembered this. I wish I would have valued more of this or that. So
Yeah.
for me, obviously, it's family, it's my wife, it's my kids, it's adventure, it's living in the moment, it's writing, it's painting, it's photographing, it's all of these things as much as I can every day, so that I'm just maximizing this gift of life that I have on this crazy planet.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event in human history happen before your eyes, it won't create a tear in time, nothing weird will happen, you just get to witness it. What event in human history do you want to see happen in front of you?
That is an impossible question.
There's so much.
I write in one of my books that I have a paralyzing feeling. It's almost an obsessive feeling. I don't have many of these, but this is one such feeling where if I'm flying and I look out the window and way down below, I can see a small little village in the mountains or in a valley or something. I want to be teleported there and have lived my life there. This concept of there. And then the plane gets to the next valley and it's like, my God, my life would be so enriched if I could go and struggle and learn and love and live with them. And then before I know it, we're on the next space and I want to go there and I want to go there and I want to go. So it's impossible to identify a particular place. I suppose, to name one would do a disservice to all the other possibilities.
And that's an answer in itself.
Really cool. Yeah. Right. Like
that's an answer in itself, because it happens. There's sometimes where it's like, I can't, it's not going to happen. So, and I figured you have that personality type. So if anybody wants to delve into all of these wonderful avenues that you're living and you're putting out into the world, where do they go?
So on YouTube, I have a popular YouTube channel, especially focused on wildlife. It's youtube.com/traveling teacher, but teacher, the normal word was taken already. And so it's TEACHR. Okay. And so it's facebook.com/traveling teacher. And then Instagram is the same thing, it's traveling.teacher. And then Facebook, same thing, facebook.com/traveling teacher. And then on Amazon, you can search for my books. You can just search my name, Joshua Smalley. I have written 2 books so far. I'm working on my 3rd. One is a self-help book I alluded to earlier, The Inner Voice Revolution, and how to make good decisions and sort of self-audit your life. And then the other one is a fictional memoir about my trek looking for the snow leopards that I had alluded to earlier as well in the Himalayas. And now I've got 8 more books to write about all these other crazy adventures I've done. So I got to get busy. But Amazon, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, these are the main places you can find me.
Wonderful. Joshua, I love your spirit, man. I feel like a kindred spirit. I totally get it. I'm at that 50 plus point in my life where sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh my God, this is all going to come to a close someday. And it's a weird feeling, because it's not something that it's premeditated. I've never been like that. I've never been like, there's an elapsing. It's just being in the soup, living it, doing it. But you just realize you just got to, sometimes probably the older you get, you got to charge harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as Christopher Hitchens once said, what the saddest part about all this is that the party goes on without you. And so having children is nice because you can impart onto them some of your spirit and passion and vision, and hope that some of that lives on in their own versions in the future.
Well said. Totally. It all lives on in one way or another, but thank you so much. Keep making the world a bright place. We need it. I love the way you roll. So thank you, sir. I'm glad we had the chance to connect, and have a wonderful holiday, man, and have a great 2026.
Send you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.